Revealed. I inherited my uncle's cursed cabin in British Columbia with 7 sinister, haunted rules. Sarah's heart raced as she parked her beat-up sedan in front of the cabin, the shadows of the towering pines closing in like dark sentinels. The atmosphere thickened, an invisible weight settling over her and her son, Noah. This wasn't just any inheritance, it was a refuge from their desperate, debt-ridden life in Southern California. But an unsettling chill skittered along her skin, warning her this cabin wasn't entirely welcoming. "What do you think, Mom?" Noah asked, his voice wavering slightly. The cabin's shingled roof sagged, and thick mist curled around its weathered logs like ghostly fingers, creeping toward them. "Looks cozy?" "Sure, kiddo." "Cozy," she replied, forcing a smile that felt more like a grimace. As they stepped inside, dust motes swirled through the dim light. Sarah's unease began to crumble beneath a facade of excitement. This place was theirs for now. But as the sunlight faded behind the trees, an otherworldly silence descended. Hours slipped away as they explored their new refuge, the tension of their old life gradually fading until they were swept up in a fragile sense of freedom. In the kitchen, while rummaging through drawers, Sarah stumbled upon a leather-bound notebook nearly hidden beneath a layer of dust. Flipping it open, her heart dropped as she read the entries written in her uncle's jagged handwriting. 7 disturbing rules to follow if they wish to remain unharmed. 1. Always lock the doors by sunset. 2. Never venture into the woods after dark. 3. Avoid speaking to the shadows. 4. Don't let sleep come too easily, dreams lie. 5. Trust no one, not even your own heart. 6. Leave tokens of gratitude by the hearth each night. 7. The woods will remember your fears, heed them as a warning. Her grandfather had been plagued with paranoia. Certainly, this was just remnants of a troubled mind. Yet, as darkness crept upon them, the shadows deepened, seeming to come alive around the cabin. Whispers echoed, soft and eerie, a haunting lullaby that sent shivers down Sarah's spine. Suddenly, the door slammed shut just as she glanced toward it. "Noah!" she called, her pulse quickening. A flicker of something, was it a shadow? Darted outside the window. Sarah felt her palms grow clammy. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Noah, we should get some rest, okay?" she whispered, the weight of unseen eyes pressing in. But as he lay on the lumpy mattress, the woods outside seemed to breathe, woods that whispered and wept. Her son had started having nightmares, where shadows whispered deceitfully. It felt almost alive, closing in on them as it seeped through the walls. A slight rustle got her attention. Focusing back on the outside, a fog enveloped the path like a predator stalking its prey. Suddenly it dawned on her, the cabin wasn't just cursed, it was a reflection of their own fears. They weren't merely running from their past, they were trapped now in a world where every choice took on new meaning. Fear clawed at her heart. What if the rules were not mere superstition? What if breaking them led to an unleashed horror? As Noah's breath quickened in troubled sleep, she found herself drawn back to the notebook, its chilling rules swirling in her mind like a storm. Determined to confront the unearthly power that inhabited these woods, Sarah felt the cold dread of reality settle deep within her. Would she bend to the will of the cursed rules or take the leap into terror that awaited them? She couldn't ignore the feeling that lurking in the mist was an ancient truth, waiting to reveal a terrifying secret that would either shatter them or set them free. The wind howled through the trees, a mournful sound reverberating through the cabin walls. Sarah lay wide awake, staring at the ceiling, heart racing with dread. Noah's soft breathing filled the space, but it was the eerie whispers that clawed at her sanity. They slithered around her, dancing just beyond her grasp, teasing her with fragmented words. "Mom, are you awake?" Noah's voice broke through the terror-laden silence. "Yes, honey. I'm here," she replied, hoping to project comfort that she didn't feel. What's happening outside? His young voice quivered with fear. There's just wind, sweetheart. Just wind, she reassured him, though the growling gusts felt alive, angry even. Suddenly, the shadows in the corners seemed to shift, twisting into dark formations that barely resembled anything human. A cold sweat trickled down her spine. Was it her imagination, or was it real? She couldn't tell. The rules flashed in her mind, urging her to act. Never venture into the woods after dark echoed louder than the rest. But a need to understand the source of the whispers gnawed at her resolve. Something was waiting for her out there, a desperate energy pulling her towards the frightening unknown. Noah, I need you to stay in bed. Don't move, okay? She murmured, inching toward the window. Rolling her shoulders back to suppress shaking hands, she peered outside, looking for anything that matched the creeping fear forming in her gut. The fog thickened, swirling like smoke that consumed every branch and twig. Then she saw something crouched low, hidden within the mist, its outline barely discernible. It shifted. A figure, maybe? Just a few feet away. Panic clawed at her throat. It didn't belong to Noah. It was something she recognized. She quickly pulled back from the window. Stay in bed, she hissed, trying to sound commanding, but her voice was shaky. Noah whimpered. Mom, I'm scared. Me too, she whispered, though part of her wanted to break the rules. What if she could confront whatever haunted the woods? What if it was tied to the rules her uncle had laid down? Avoiding shadows was one thing, but actively seeking answers could be the spark that revealed the truth. Or the end of them. Unable to resist the pull, Sarah grabbed a flashlight from a rusty drawer. Noah, listen to me. I'm going outside just for a moment. If I'm not back in 2 minutes, you lock the door and don't open it for anyone. Promise? Mom! He cried, fear lacing his voice. She hesitated at the cabin's door and turned, locking eyes with her son. The pain of her decision twisted in her chest. I promise I'll be okay, she lied. Stepping outside felt like crossing a threshold into another realm. The air was thick and cold, as if the fog itself had taken on a life of its own, wrapping around her like cold fingers. Each step was a struggle against an unseen force, drawing her deeper into the suffocating mist. The shadows shifted closer. Whispers surrounded her. They grew louder, merging into a cacophony of frightened voices urging her to turn back. But she pressed on, flashlight beam piercing through the vapor. There, just in the corner of her vision, a flicker of movement. Show yourself! She shouted into the swirling void, courage mingling with panic. The woods seemed to breathe, a heavy inhale as something manifested, its form taking shape out of the darkness. And then she felt it, a rush of fear erupting from the depths of the forest, igniting a primal instinct to flee. Sarah's heart thundered in her chest as a terrible realization hit her. The rules weren't just warnings. They were a plea for survival against whatever had claimed this place. Chest heaving, she turned to run back to the cabin, but the mist thickened, wrapping around her like a vice. Behind her, shadows began to whisper, beckoning her with familiar phrases. Don't let sleep come too easily, dreams lie. A chill gripped her. What truth lay in the darkness? And would she make it back before it was too late? The darkness entangled her as Sarah fought against the pull. Just as she thought she might be lost, a piercing scream shot through the air, echoing through the trees. Noah! She bolted towards the cabin's door, desperate as the shadows lunged closer, the rules echoing in her mind. The woods wouldn't let them go easily, but Sarah was determined. Trapped in the grip of a haunting choice, the unseen fate of the cabin loomed ever closer. The door creaked ominously as Sarah flung it open, heart racing, breath coming in ragged gasps. The cabin felt like a sanctuary against the chaotic darkness outside, but panic surged as she realized that Noah's voice had vanished. Noah! She called out, her echoes swallowed by the walls. The silence that answered was worse than the chilling whispers. She stepped inside, every instinct screaming that something was wrong. Her flashlight flickered, the weak beam shivering against the corners of the room. Shadows lingered like dark stains on the walls. She could hear her own heartbeat, thudding loudly in her ears, drowning everything else out. What had happened to her son? Noah! She tried again, this time her voice stronger, a desperate plea that ricocheted off the walls. Fear sank its teeth deeper into her, gnawing at her resolve. She dashed to his room, throwing the door wide open. The bed was empty, blankets tossed aside. A cold knot formed in her chest. Where did he go? The cabin seemed to pulse with a life of its own, shadows reaching as if searching, roaming, eager. The whispers were louder now, swirling around her in a frenzy. Find him, they urged, teasing her senses. Sarah couldn't tell if they were urging her forward or warning her away. Stay close, she shouted into the dimness. She had to think. She turned to the living room, where the darkness pooled like thickened oil. Every instinct told her to get out, to flee, but she needed to find Noah. As she crossed the threshold, a sudden chill invaded the air, and a gust of wind slammed the cabin door shut behind her. Her heart skipped. With trembling hands, she clutched the flashlight and scanned the room. The beams of light caught ghostly shapes, pictures of her uncle lining the walls. His gaze was menacing, as if he knew a secret that only the dead could comprehend. One picture seemed to ripple in the light, distorting like a reflection in disturbed water. Noah! She cried, stepping closer to the wall, drawn in by the movement. Her foot struck something on the floor, a small wooden box, half hidden under the armchair. She knelt to pick it up, her hands shaking. The lid creaked open to reveal old photographs and a crumpled note, yellowed with age. Do not listen, it began, ink smudged as if the writer had trembled as he wrote it. The wind howled outside, carrying a wretched moan that penetrated her soul. The shadows swelled, clutching at the edges of her vision. Something was happening in the woods tonight, something that demanded a sacrifice. Sarah felt cold sweat trickling down the back of her neck. Noah! She screamed, the word ripping from her throat. She dashed toward the door, but something blocked her path, a figure emerging slowly from the corner opposite the window. It was draped in shadows, a face obscured. For a moment, everything hung in the air, her breath, the whispers, the darkness. Find him before he becomes one of them, a voice rasped, echoing painfully in her mind. The figure moved closer, revealing hollow eyes that seemed to swallow the light. What does that mean? Where is my son? She screamed, desperation clawing at her throat, but the figure didn't answer. Instead, tendrils of darkness slithered around its form, reaching towards Sarah with an urgency she couldn't fathom. Come join us, the figure beckoned, and the shadows swirled, beckoning her to slip into their abyss. Gritting her teeth, she turned, racing toward the back of the cabin. Maybe she could find a window, something. But the darkness twisted, wrapping around her ankles, pulling her down. Noah! She shouted one last time. As the shadows intensified, engulfing her, a distant sound broke through, soft, innocent laughter. Noah? Was it real? Or a sinister trick? The laughter filled the air, drawing her deeper into the unknown. With a final surge of will, Sarah broke free from the shadows and lunged toward the back door, desperate to follow the sound. The woods waited, holding secrets and dread in their gnarled embrace, urging her to confront the twisted fate that awaited. But would she find her son, or something worse? The door burst open, and Sarah stumbled into the suffocating darkness outside, gasping for air. The laughter faded, echoing like a cruel taunt in the cold night. The woods loomed tall and menacing, branches reaching out like skeletal hands. Each rustle felt like a warning, each gust of wind a reminder of the shadows that still thrived within the cabin behind her. Noah! She yelled, voice trembling. The silence that followed was deafening, ringing in her ears like a tolling bell. Her pulse quickened, sending a surge of adrenaline coursing through her veins. She forced herself to steady her breath, pushing the fear down. She needed to keep moving. The forest was alive with sounds, but none of them held the familiarity of her son's laughter. Instead, she heard distant whispers swirling through the trees, mingling with the babbling of the nearby stream. Find him, those relentless whispers echoed again, mocking her desperation. She turned in a circle, trying to gain her bearings. The moon hung high, casting silver light that only deepened the shadows. Every corner of the woods seemed to harbor something sinister. It felt as if the air was charged, like the calm before a storm. As she stepped forward, the branches cracked under her feet, the sound sharp in the stillness. A chill crept along her spine. She knew she had to find Noah, but with each step her fear mounted. What if whatever had taken him waited nearby? Noah! Please! Her voice rang out, swallowed by the oppressive darkness. She wished she could will him to appear, to see his small face light up with joy, as it always did when they played hide and seek. But this was not a game. A knot twisted in her gut, then she stumbled upon a clearing. It felt eerily peaceful in contrast to the thick tangles of trees. Moonlight pooled like a spotlight, illuminating the ground covered in thick moss. In the center was something unnatural, a twisted tree, gnarled and entangled, its bark dark and glistening, as if soaked in some dark fluid, and there, beneath the tree, something shimmered. Sarah's heart raced. She approached, a mix of trepidation and hope swelling in her chest. When she reached it, she realized it was a small bracelet, Noah's bracelet. The one she had given him for his birthday. Pinpricks of terror filled her as she glanced around the clearing. Noah? But then she noticed it. Shadows flickering just behind the tree, moving unnaturally. Something was there. Her heartbeat thundered. She backed away slowly, not daring to break eye contact with the shape that began to emerge, something small, childish, the silhouette of a boy. Mommy, the voice was sweet, yet twisted by a sorrowful undertone. Noah! Relief crashed through her for an instant, but as quickly as it came, dread replaced it. The figure was wrong, its features blurred and pallid, the way something decayed looks when it's too long in the sun. Come closer, it lured, head tilting unnaturally. I'm waiting for you, Noah, don't! She lunged backward, a visceral instinct clawing at her. The once familiar voice now dripped with envy and hunger. Help me, Mommy! It wailed, and the shadows surged, stretching toward her like greedy fingers. The figure flickered, revealing flashes of its slit-like mouth, gnashing teeth that brushed past its thin lips. Sarah stumbled, tearing her gaze away. The whispers amplified, forming chilling sentences. Join him, unite under the shadows. She twisted, heart hammering, and fled back into the woods, struggling to keep her mind intact amid the growing darkness that pursued her. Noah! She screamed, racing through the trees, branches snagging at her clothes, the wind howling a cruel lament. The laughter persisted, echoing through the depths of endless night, drawing her back toward the nightmare. With every breath, she felt the shadows grip tighter, dragging her closer to the depths of despair that had claimed her son. But she would not lose him, not to the darkness. As her eyes darted through the fog of dread, she made a decision. There had to be a way to break whatever curse held him captive. Then suddenly, a flash, a gleam of light just beyond the thicket. What she saw next sent ice through her veins. One last look revealed the twisted form of her son against the darkness, an anguished expression on his once sweet face, as shadows encircled him, claiming him piece by piece. Help me, before I become one of them. And just like that, Sarah realized the stakes were higher than she knew. Time was running out. What was the cost of saving Noah? Would she be willing to pay? Panic surged through Sarah like a wildfire. The shadows stretched toward Noah, a consuming legion ready to pull him into their depths. She turned, frantically searching for any sign of escape. The trees pressed in, dark and unwelcoming, as if they conspired against her. The whispers swirled around her, mocking, urging her toward the very edge of despair. Noah! She cried again, her desperation slicing through the stillness. Every ounce of hope fought against the suffocating fear that threatened to engulf her. Keeping her feet moving felt like wading through molasses, each step heavier than the last. Just as she neared the edge of the thicket, another flash of light flickered far to the left. It was more brilliant, more potent, as if it held a power that beckoned her. She hesitated, torn between Noah's terrified screams and the allure of that light. Mommy! Please! His voice now carried a lurching urgency, and each syllable hit her like a dagger. In a heartbeat decision, she darted toward the light. Branches whipped at her face as the air thinned, dragging the scent of damp earth and decay into her lungs. She burst through, skidding to a halt in another clearing, this one not serene but grim. A stone altar lay before her, ancient and covered in moss and sinister carvings, depicting twisted figures locked in agony. Her breath caught as she recognized them. Each figure bore resemblance to children, their faces contorted in shared horror. The ground thrummed beneath her feet, as if the earth itself was alive and aware. Guttural whispers coalesced, their language insidious, weaving tales of sacrifices made, shadows taken willingly. "Noah!" she screamed, her voice cracking. A silhouette flickered on the stone, the bright light behind her illuminating a familiar round face, only now it was contorted in fear. "Mommy, I am hurting." His image fluctuating between innocence and something deeply grotesque. A single tear glistened on his cheek, thick and dark, as shadows clawed around him, tugging at the edges of his form. The altar felt ominous, a gateway to whatever had taken her son. She remembered the bracelet. Trembling hands fished it from her pocket, the metal warm in her palm. She held it out, eyes squinting to see if it would draw him closer or if it would absorb him with its magic. "Come to me, Noah! It's your bracelet. Remember when I gave it to you? Did that carry weight in this twisted realm? Did memory have power here?" The shadows recoiled for a moment, as if unsettled by the object's familiarity. But Noah's figure remained trapped, fighting against the binding darkness. "Help me please, Mommy!" His voice cracked, underlined by a deepening echo of something darker. Sarah felt warmth pooling in her chest, hope battling against despair. She started toward the altar, the bracelet clutched tight with her other hand stretching out to him. She pushed against the shadows, feeling a rush of heat as she crossed the threshold. But the shadows rallied, more insidious than before. They rushed forward, swirling, sharp tendrils of darkness smashing into her. "No! No!" she yelled as the shadows wrapped around her limbs, pulling her away from Noah's grasp. The altar quaked with her panic. Its markings began to glow with an unsettling light. "Mommy, no!" The anguished cry shattered her sanity, splitting her heart wide open. Just as she began to slip away, she heard a deeper, malevolent voice form around the altar, cold and mocking. "To take one, you must give yourself? What does that mean?" she gasped, terror freezing her blood. She felt the shadows tightening, threatening to crush her. "No!" she screamed, the bracelet slipping from her fingers, hitting the ground with a dull thud, and just like that, silence descended, piercing and suffocating. What awaited her in the void? Was there a way out, or was this darkness the end? "Mommy," came the distant whisper, luring her back into the shadows, a dark promise threading through the air. Sarah fought to remain conscious as the world around her dissolved in a swirling maelstrom of whispers and shadows. Would she dare confront the truth, whatever it might cost? The darkness wrapped around Sarah like a living entity, suffocating her. She gasped for breath, each inhalation scratching her throat raw. Her heart thundered, an urgent warning in her chest, as though it sensed the depths of horror closing in. The whispers, once distant, now vibrated in her bones, threatening to drown her sanity. "Mommy," Noah's voice pulled her back, each syllable weighed down with dread. It sliced through her like a desperate call for help, yet it also scared her more than the chilling void surrounding her. Her eyes strained against the shadows, searching for the brightness that had led her here. But the light felt impossibly far, swallowed whole by the creeping blackness. With every passing moment, she sensed the whispers intensifying, becoming a cacophony of terror, hissing warnings, wails of anguish, and echoes of forgotten pains. Clenching her fists, she fought back against the shadows trying to drag her into their embrace. "I won't give up!" she shouted, finding a flicker of defiance. Even in the depths of despair, she had to believe, had to hold on to the hope that guided her to this place. "Mommy, please!" Noah's voice trembled, strained and filled with anguish. The shadows tightened, tugging at her like a hungry beast. A swirling mist began to form around her feet, twisting upward, coiling around her legs. Visions surged in her mind, flashes of warmth and laughter. Noah, innocent and blissful, his eyes sparkling with life. But alongside that joy came images of pain and emptiness. The altar hummed with an unsettling energy, pulsating with every breath she took. And then, she noticed something, a faint gleam beneath the altar's surface, a sliver of that enigmatic light. Was it a way out? Or some deeper lure? With desperation igniting her resolve, she lunged. Each step was a battle against the suffocating darkness as she propelled herself forward. The shadows screamed, shrieking in fury as she fought to reach the altar. The air crackled with tension, a contest between light and dark. But as she neared, something shifted. The surface of the altar rippled, as if it were alive, still holding the scary carvings, faces twisted, open mouths still locked in silent screams. The glowing fragments began to unfurl, illuminating the darkness, but the light was tainted with a sickly hue. "Help me!" Noah's plea echoed in her heart, a haunting refrain that urged her onward. The altar's energy seemed to respond, beckoning her to touch it. Before she could think, Sarah slammed her palm against the cold stone, feeling a surge rush through her, but it wasn't the warmth she hoped for. It spread like ice, racing down her veins, and she gasped. Visions clawed at her mind, flickers of tortured souls bound to this place, each face a reflection of a child, much like Noah. "No!" she screamed, wrenching her hand back as the truth sank in. The shadows recoiled, but not before a colder dread washed over her. "Take her!" came a voice, dark and deep, reverberating through the clearing. "She must pay the price." "What price?" Sarah shouted, desperation clawing at her sanity. "Life for life," the voice hissed, a cruel delight dripping from its tone. "Which will you choose?" In that moment, every instinct within her screamed to run, but the roots of the altar gripped her so tightly that she hardly moved. The shadows began to coalesce around her, intent on making her choice evident. "No!" she yelled, her heart racing its last frantic beats. "I want to choose." "You can't have him!" Dark laughter echoed, mocking her resolve. The shadows hissed violently around her, shifting and pulling, threatening to swallow her whole. As the altar throbbed with energy, Sarah felt a surge of desperation. She had something to fight for. But the darkness loomed larger, an insatiable monster at the gates of her mind. What would she sacrifice to save Noah? As the shadows coiled tighter, closing in like a vice, Sarah stared into the abyss of the altar's glow. Something within beckoned her to surrender, but was it truly a path to salvation, or a final trap? Night pressed in as she stood at that tense crossroads, torn between the boy she loved and the malignant force that thrummed with insidious intent. What would become of Sarah in her desperate battle against the dark? Was there any escape from this nightmare closing in around them? The ground quaked beneath Sarah's feet, a frantic pulse hammering against her skin. The shadows hissed, wrapping tighter, their coldness gnawing at her resolve like an insidious whisper. Panic surged. Her breath hitched as the darkness slithered closer. "Noah!" she called, voice trembling, mixing fear with defiance. "Mommy!" His voice, a haunted echo, punctured the night. She could almost feel him, the warmth of his hand, the safety of his small frame. It gave her strength, momentary though it was, but the dark entity around her grew bolder. "Choose!" it bellowed, the sound reverberating through her skull. "Choose what?" she shouted back, her throat raw and scratchy. "What do you want from me?" "Life for life." The murmur was mocking, layers of glee wrapped within the threat. Each word licked at her mind, a cold flame that stung. The altar pulsed a malevolent heartbeat, drawing her closer with its grotesque allure. Her heart raced. If she sacrificed herself, would Noah be safe? The idea churned violently in her stomach, but every mother's instinct pushed her to protect her child. "If you think I'll give in, you're wrong!" she yelled defiantly, though her voice wavered as if in response. The darkness roared in fury, the shadows swirling into a cyclone, black tendrils clawing at her flesh. They tugged at her limbs, threatening to scatter her into nothingness. The air thickened, suffocating her will. "Do it! Or lose him forever!" The voice taunted, sinister laughter lacing the air. "No!" Sarah screamed anew, fury igniting within her chest. With every ounce of strength, she broke free from its grasp long enough to back away from the altar. Each step was a battle against the magnetic force pulling her back in. You can't have him. The altar trembled, its glow flickering as if in anger. Beneath its surface, the bodies trapped in eternal agony stirred, their silent screams echoing in her mind. The cold dread intensified, pricking at her resolve. Mommy, help me! Noah's voice trembled again, pulling her deeper into the shadows. Then she felt it, a desperate, thrumming pulse within her own heart, matching the altar's rhythm. A chilling realization washed over her. It wasn't just the altar demanding a life. It wanted her soul intertwined with its dark magic. To save Noah, she would have to connect, to bind herself forever. But the cost was something she couldn't fathom. Noah, listen! She called out, forcing clarity in the chaos. Whatever happens, I promise I'll find you. You have to be brave. Mommy, his voice faded, replaced by the whispers rising around her. Darkness can't be vanquished. It feeds on despair. The whispers grew more intense, reaching fever pitch. Shadows poured over her, a solid wall now. She could scarcely breathe. Then she remembered the light. She had caught a glimpse of the sliver beneath the altar. With renewed determination, she made a wild leap, reaching for that light. Her fingers brushed against it, and an electric shock sent a jolt. She saw Noah's face reflected, eyes wide with fear and pleading. All the love in her heart pulled. The light grew brighter, battling against the shadows, dazzling her senses with a blinding heat. But the dark voice roared louder, threatening to tear her away. It clawed at her mind. You will regret this choice. Would she? In that moment, she plunged, grasping the fragile hope that clung to her heart. She knew the darkness would retaliate. Determined, she shouted, I will never let go of my son. But the shadows surged forward, latching onto her. What awaited her, she could only dread. The conflict swirled around her in chaos as the altar heaved. The light dimmed, then flared again. She felt herself spiraling towards an answer. But would the answer bring salvation or condemnation? Something deep inside her screamed for a choice, but she had no idea of the cost. No! Echoed the voice, furious and relentless, filling the air with dread. Darkness surrounded her completely, leaving only the flicker of hope reverberating through her mind. The altar crashed forward as she hurtled into its grasp, and then everything vanished into a blinding flash of light. What lay ahead? Would the light guide her to Noah? Or was it a deceptive trap, leading her deeper into torment? The world twisted around Sarah, a kaleidoscope of colors blurring in and out of focus. She fell, suspended in nothingness, buoyed by a warmth that felt alien yet familiar. For a breathless moment, she thought she had escaped the shadows. The altar, the voices, it all faded, washed away by an overwhelming light. But as quickly as the hope flickered, it began to dim, revealing a steep darkness lurking below. Mommy, Noah's voice echoed again, a desperate plea that reverberated through her very soul. Noah! She screamed, breaking free of the light's blinding grip. She had to focus. The light wasn't her savior. It was a pathway leading her back to the horrors she feared. The sounds of shadows slithered back into her ears, tightening around her like a vice. The light swirled behind her, pushing her forward, deeper into the shadowed void. She landed hard on cold, damp ground, the impact rattling her bones. She was in a forest, dark trees reaching up like skeletal fingers into an inky sky, their leaves whispering secrets she dared not uncover. Where are you? She cried into the night. The sound bounced back at her, heavy with her despair. Suddenly, a tremor beneath her feet. No, not just beneath her, it was everywhere. The ground was alive, pulsing with a sinister energy. Shadows darted among the trees, gliding like phantoms, each movement a malice-laden caress against her skin. Sarah's soft voice beckoned. She spun around, clutching her throat. Who's there? Show yourself. A figure emerged from the shadows, indistinct but eerily familiar. It was Noah, or someone who looked like him, features twisted in agony, eyes darkened as if consumed by the very void aiming to take him. Help me, he whispered, reaching out. Noah! Her heart pounded as she dashed forward, But the darkness surged, pulling him from her grasp, the shadows clawing hungrily at his little body. "Mommy, don't let them take me!" His voice cracked, filled with raw terror. "Noah!" she cried, tears streaming down her face. She plunged forward, fighting against an unseen force. The shadows howled, encircling her legs, trying to tear her away as she stumbled deeper into the forest. "Remember the rules!" The voice from earlier, the dark entity, persisted in her mind. "To regain what you desire, you must abide by them." Her mind raced. Rules? She hadn't seen or been told of any rules. What did it mean? A flash of memory ignited as she thought back to the altar. Life for life echoed through her thoughts, growing louder, a chant conjured from the depths of the nightmare. "No!" she screamed, logic snapping like a brittle twig. "I won't play your games." The shadows hissed louder, their breath icy against her flesh. "But you already have." Through her terror, a glimmer sparkled just beyond the menacing grip of darkness, a flicker of unmistakable light throbbing ahead. It pulsed with the rhythm of her heart, as if they were connected. She dashed toward it, drawing strength from the bond that tethered her to Noah. But the closer she got, the more the shadows clawed at her. The force grew heavier, dragging at her feet, trying to swallow her whole. She flailed, kicking wildly. "Noah!" Ahead, the light grew brighter, swallowing the shadows like a ravenous beast. "Choose!" The dark voice echoed again, the chilling laughter rising around her. "You can still turn back." Her heart raced. Would running away save Noah? Or was she destined to lose him forever if she didn't confront the darkness? With every ounce of courage, Sarah pressed on, bursting through the last barrier of shadows. As she emerged, she gasped at the radiant light that engulfed her, waiting for her next move. But just then, Noah's face distorted again in her mind, twisted by unspeakable horrors. She gasped, trapped between choices. Would she enter that light and risk everything, knowing the darkness wouldn't let go easy, or succumb to the shadows that threatened to erase them both? As vertigo gripped her, the light flickered, and from the shadows something lunged at her, a monstrous claw reaching out with a hungry roar. What awaited in the next heartbeat? Would she be able to fight back, or would she succumb to the devastation that had followed her so relentlessly? The claw missed her by inches, slick and dark, a hint of slime dripping off its tips. Sarah stumbled back, shock rippling through her. Fear clawed at her heart, but she couldn't let it paralyze her. She whirled, forcing her legs to move, desperate to evade whatever hunted her in this pitch-black forest. "Noah!" She screamed again, the name erupting from her lips as if it were a lifeline. The shadows around her writhed, thick and cloying, intent on dragging her down. Twisted figures lunged forward, mere silhouettes against the vastness of the night, each one howling with a hunger that made her skin crawl. The light wasn't simply an escape, it had become her sole purpose. She sprinted toward its glow, feeling the darkness reaching out, wrapping tendrils around her waist. She gasped and gritted her teeth, pushing against the weight. She couldn't let them win. "Do you not understand?" The dark voice taunted, echoing around her. "You forged a chain of promises, and now they bind you tighter than ever. There is no way out. Noah is worth any price," she shouted, defiance sparking within her. With every step, the pulsing light drew closer. The shadows snarled and shrieked, animating the air with a palpable dread. "Then let us test that, shall we?" The voice cackled, and suddenly, the forest erupted with terrifying images, dark flashes of broken memories filled with pain and suffering. Faces emerged from the gloom, twisted and familiar, each pleading with her, fingers stretched out like branches. They were lost souls, wretched and disfigured backstage players in her understanding of despair. "No! Stay away!" she screamed, the guilt and terror colliding within her chest. This many could not be right. There had to be a way to destroy this nightmare. The figures sprawled and fought among themselves, each trapped in an eternal cycle of suffering, taunting her as she drew closer to the blinding light. But that burst of warmth, she could feel it seeping into her, igniting flickers of hope. With an explosive determination, she lunged forward, summoning every ounce of her will. The encroaching darkness clawed at her back, but she surged toward the light. She could almost hear Noah's laughter beneath the cacophony of shrieks, a sweet sound snatched from her memory. But then, the shadows swirled, coalescing into a monstrous figure that loomed above her, feasting on her fear. It emanated pure malice, eyes like bottomless pits glaring down at her. "You cannot escape. You must pay!" It roared, the ground shaking beneath her. Sarah was paralyzed, caught between its towering form and the salvation of the light. "What do you want from me?" she cried out, desperation breaking through her voice. "Your choice. But know this," the creature hissed. "The price is higher than you can imagine." Before she could register the implications, the shadow lunged, its claw descending with horrifying speed. Time stretched around her. Within that moment of impending doom, crystal-clear clarity flashed in her mind. The twisted faces surrounding her began to scream in unison, voices vibrating in the very marrow of her bones. They knew what her choice meant. They waited for her to decide. "Sarah!" The whisper broke through the chaos. It was Noah again, his small voice a beacon in the tumult. "Mommy, please!" That one plea snapped something in her. She could not falter, she would not fold. Summoning all her courage, she roared back, "I choose love!" The moment those words escaped, a shockwave surged through the air. The light flared violently, illuminating the forest in a dazzling brilliance that threatened to blind her. The shadows recoiled as if burned, screeching in fury, but she didn't look back. She was running toward Noah, not towards the light, but towards her son. But as she closed the distance, the light flickered ominously. The shadows twirled around her again, refusing to let her go, dragging at the hem of her sanity. "Mom!" Noah's voice quivered with fright. She could feel an impending rupture in the fabric around them. "Hold on, Noah! I'm coming!" Sarah cried, heart racing. Adrenaline spiking. Just beyond was safety. Just ahead was redemption. The shadow's shrieks morphed into stomach-churning laughter that echoed through her head as she barreled through the chaos. Then came a thunderous crack, a blinding flash split the air, and she found herself suspended once again in that swirling nothingness. She gasped sharply, choking on fear. This wasn't over. Not yet. Would she be torn apart, or survive to face the rules that held her fate? An indescribable weight settled deep in her gut as she braced for whatever horror awaited her next. The weight of silence hung heavy in the air, a thick mist that seemed to wrap around Sarah's lungs, squeezing tighter with each passing moment. She had screamed for Noah, clawed through shadows, and faced the unspeakable truths that threatened to consume her whole. But here she was, suspended in that endless void, back where it all began, with nothing but the distant echoes of whispered promises ringing in her head. "Mom!" The soft plea broke through the oppressive darkness, pulling her heart in 1,000 directions. It was his voice, but it wasn't just a sound, it was the tether to her very being. "Noah!" she called, desperation surging anew. In that moment of clarity, everything aligned in her mind: the love, the hope, the sacrifice. Tears streamed down her face, a dam breaking under the weight of her resolve. She wouldn't give up. She couldn't. Suddenly, the void trembled, shuddering as if it were aware of her determination. Wind swirled around her, brushing against her skin like the gentle caress of her son's small hand. Every fabric of her being cried out to push forward, to seek him, to surrender to the light she had only glimpsed before. "Come on, Noah," she cried, her resolve ignited into a fierce flame. "We're getting out of here together." With the ferocity of a mother's love, she felt a force pulling her toward the flickering brightness ahead. The shadows howled, retreating momentarily as the light surged with newfound intensity. She broke through a barrier of darkness, bursting into a world that was alive with color and warmth instead of tormented shades and echoing whispers. Gasping for breath, she found herself standing in the clearing, the very same place where the altar had once been, yet now it thrummed with a different energy, one that brought hope, not fear. Patches of moonlight bathed the fraying edges of her reality, illuminating her surroundings with an ethereal glow. "Mom!" The familiar voice broke through the stillness, laced with vibrant relief. "Noah!" She spun around, and there he was, standing just a few feet away, tangled hair and bright eyes shining with curiosity. He looked unscathed and angelic, yet there was wisdom lingering there in his innocent expression. As she rushed toward him, the shadows that had plagued them began to dissipate like a fading nightmare. "Mommy, I thought I lost you." His arms wrapped tightly around her waist as if fearing she might vanish again, the warmth of his small body enveloping her in solace. "I'm here," she whispered against his hair, the relief crashing over her like waves, washing away the tension that had built for so long. "I'm right here, and I'll always be with you." As they connected, Sarah felt a shift in the atmosphere, a crack in the dark wall that had threatened them, a final gasp as the shadows retreated, hissing and howling just beyond the light, losing their strength with every heartbeat. Together they stood with the power of their love as an anchor, fending off the desperate whispers that tried to reweave their reality. "Did we do it, Mommy? Are we free?" Noah asked, looking up at her with wide, hopeful eyes. "Yes, my love," she replied, heart swelling with gratitude. "We've broken their hold. We found our way home." The air felt lighter, charged with possibilities as the light flickered. Sarah grasped Noah's hand fiercely, steering them toward the edge of the clearing. Behind them, the shadows whirled, a chaotic storm retreating into memory as they stepped through a shimmering barrier of light. The old cabin nestled in the trees faded from view, a ghost of a past that no longer bound them. As they emerged into a warm embrace of sunlight, light poured over them, filling in cracks that had formed through fear and uncertainty. The woods felt different now, transformed by their courage and commitment to one another, bursting with life and the beauty of new beginnings. "Look, Mom!" Noah exclaimed, pointing to nearby blossoms bursting in vibrant color, vibrant and alive. "Everything is back to normal." "It's like magic." Sarah smiled, ruffling his hair. "We're back to normal, kiddo." Together, they walked toward the path that led home, away from the haunting memories of the past and into the bright horizon that promised hope. As each step lightened their spirits, the woods carried echoes of laughter, a reminder that they had faced darkness and returned, emerging with a fierce bond forged in survival. "Never again," Sarah breathed, a powerful promise to a past that threatened to return. "We make our rules now." Noah nodded, a grin breaking across his face. "Yeah, our own rules. One always stick together." "Exactly. Always." As they journeyed deeper into the awakening world, Sarah knew that together, they could face whatever lay ahead. The past would remain buried within the shadows, a distant echo that could never reach them again. And so they ventured into the light, hand in hand, embracing the promise of tomorrow, fearless and free. Now, don't just stand there. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. This is the moment to show your support. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm, you know it makes a difference. And listen up, flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. I want to hear all your thoughts. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. True fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions. Let's keep the stories coming.